Welcome to the Murfreesboro.com podcast, where we talk all things Murfreesboro, Tennessee. Join host John Iseri, his co-host Jonathan Harmon, and producer Trent Denson as they talk about all the great things happening in our city, from construction updates to local business spotlights and all the great events happening in our community. Tune in for all you need to know from Murfreesboro.com. Welcome to the show.
Hello, Murfreesboro. Good morning. Welcome back. And what do we call this? The 2.0? I still don't know the name.
We still don't have a name. Did you ever put that up?
I did, and there were actually some good responses, but I didn't.
All right, so we need to get together and pick. So Murfreesboro.com podcast 2.0.
Yeah. This is
a
our
terrible name, isn't it?
Right? Well, this is technically our 7th episode, but we got postponed a little bit, so it's our 3rd episode of the new and improved version.
Gotcha.
We're calling
it's
it.
always better to do something new and improved.
That's right.
That's
yeah.
right.
And this week we have a very special guest. For those of you watching, you can see him on camera. And for those of you listening, Mayor Shane McFarland is here with us. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
We know. I keep forgetting about that thing. That's
guys,
awesome.
really, y'all stay seated.
Yeah.
Standing ovation.
Yeah.
But there have been a lot of questions that have come up, obviously, here recently with different topics, which we'll get into in a second. But we had posted a question on our Facebook page, and a lot of people. I just said we were meeting with you, and does anybody have a question you want to ask? And there was quite a large response, but they were all around certain topics, and so I figured we could talk about those today.
Before we get into that, so I'm relatively new to Murfreesboro as a resident. So I've lived in this house for 3 years and grew up in Smyrna. So Mayor Reed out there is a dear friend of mine. So
I love Mary Esther.
She's fantastic, wonderful human being. But tell me a little bit, or tell us a little bit about you, like your background, how long you've been mayor, why in the world you'd want to be mayor, that kind of thing.
I'm like you, and I'm not from here. So I moved here in 92 with my twin brother to go to MTSU. There were 40,000 residents in Murfreesboro in 1992.
Yeah.
About 10,000 at MTSU. So, now we're closer to 150,000. But graduated from MTSU in 97 with an accounting degree. Loved Murfreesboro so much, stayed here.
You bought something at Davis Market, didn't you?
I did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the curse, man.
Yeah. I bought. I won't tell you what.
Yeah, exactly. I think we all know because we all did too.
But
I don't know what you're talking about.
My wife and I, she's from Murfreesboro, graduated from UT, and she came back to Murfreesboro, and so we got married in '99. And I came on I actually started on the Murfreesboro Planning Commission in 2002. I think was the date. I served there for 3 or 4 years, ran for council, got elected in 2006, served on the council till 2014, elected to mayor in 2014, and have been involved with the city ever since. So it's really interesting. Local politics, I think, so much different than national and state politics.
For sure.
Because we live in our community. And I'm not saying that the state people don't, but, largely, a lot of times you don't necessarily know what's happening day to day in your state government or for that matter in your the federal government. We don't know all the bills they pass and those things, but really on the local side, everything's in the open. And so I always joke that, it's not like we can hide in the grocery store when, I'm shopping on Sunday in Publix. People were accessible, and that's really the cool part, I think, with local politics.
Well, and it's the stuff that's going to impact you right now.
Yep.
Immediately.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's very beneficial. I spoke to a group last night, and I just told them, several of the people I talked with, and one lady I talked with, coming back from a soccer match in Columbia, and I talked with her for probably 45 minutes on my way home, and we didn't agree on a lot, but I think it's still good, and I stressed this the other night, that it's still good that your elected officials talk to you, and that you can pick up the phone and, John can message me and say, hey, can you come to a podcast? I'm like, well, sure, man. Yeah, I'll do that. And so
Thank you very much, by the way.
No, it's my pleasure. So, I think that's the cool part about local government is you're still involved, and we, it's part-time for us. That we all have full-time jobs, and that's like Mary Esther. In Smyrna, she's part-time as well, and so we're able to talk through, how we handle those things.
That is still just mind-blowing to me that yours and her job are part-time. They pay basically nothing,
Yeah, I mean,
especially when you do it per hour.
well, I mean, I think there's a good part to that and probably a bad part. I think if you have a group that is not responsive, that they don't return emails, they don't return phone calls, then that's one thing. I do think with the city manager form of government, it's hard to argue that Murfreesboro has not been successful with that form of government, and it takes politics out of the day-to-day operations. I mean, you don't have, when a new administration comes in, you don't have everyone who is associated with one mayor gets fired, and you bring in all new people. So that's one of the reasons I think that we're not involved in hiring and firing. We're not involved in day-to-day operations. I joke with people and say that, picking up trash is not a Republican thing. It's not a Democrat thing. I mean, we pick up your trash. I mean, we provide solid waste. We provide water, sewer. We provide roads. And, that's really what we do as a city, is making sure that, those services are continuing along.
Yeah.
All right.
That's a great segue.
You literally stole the words out of my mouth.
Y'all want to talk trash, don't you?
Yeah, talk trash. Well, that was the number one question that was brought up, being the landfill thing with the recent proposal from them and all that stuff, and then with that was just there was a kind of group it all together with the landfill, and then people were curious about a recycling program. But on the landfill, feel free, fill us in. Yeah,
I mean, so what happened, and really, I think you have to go back. It's easy, you've heard the saying that when an elected official, like a new mayor, gets elected, right? And so when he comes in or she comes into their office, there's 3 cards on their desk, and the previous mayor says, "Hey, whenever you're in trouble, you need to open one of these cards." And so the mayor gets in trouble, and he opens one of the cards, and it says, "Blame me." And then he gets in trouble again, and says the second card says, "Blame me." And then he gets in trouble the third time and says. He opens the third card and it says, "Prepare 3 cards." So it's easy for me to look back and second guess decisions that were made. But, back in the early 90s, there was an agreement that was signed with the county and even with the city of Murfreesboro on processing leachate. And, I think you can argue whether those were good deals or bad deals. I would probably say that the deals that were signed back then didn't anticipate the growth that would happen in the community and in what size that landfill would get. So we've been working forward really about 6.5, 7 years ago. Right when I was elected, I met with Mayor Burgess and said, "Mayor Burgess, we got to tackle this solid waste issue. We got to work through, what we're going to do next." And that went into a proposal where the county, the cities, Eagleville, Smyrna, Laverne, we all partnered, and we hired a consultant that was, I think they were out of Maryland, that came in, and we talked about, what's next. And so I'll never forget that the study came back, and the study said, we think the best option is Middle Point 2.0. All right. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. We've gone through this whole process with a solid waste study, and you're telling us that the best and easiest thing to do is to expand the landfill. And I'm like, well, we could have saved money and not gone through this year-long process. We knew we could do that. So, back then, really said, I don't think expanding the landfill is the right thing to do. And the city council, over the last 3 or 4 years, we have been preparing ourselves for what's next as far as what we're going to do with where we're going to take the trash. And so when Mayor Ketron was elected, he really stepped in to say, I want to start this solid waste process. And, fast forward, they're going through an RFP process to where I think it's 11 or 12 different companies have submitted, hey, this is what we would like to look next. And apparently there was some discussion in Metro about their construction and debris landfill that something happened, and there was some discussion that happened at the county commission level, and ultimately I think Republic got spooked, and they, on April the 12th, which was a Sunday, sent a letter that we got secondhand asking for part 1 of an expansion of the landfill. It's a pretty stringent process. So we went through, and over that next week, met with Mayor Ketron, actually met with Republic. They came in from Arizona on last Tuesday, and then we went and met with TDEC, Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation, who actually has to approve this. We met with them on Thursday to really go through and explain, sort of some of the things that that we're dealing with on not only the north side of town, but really what we're dealing with all over Murfreesboro. And so when I met with the Republic on Tuesday, I asked them, to withdraw their application. That it would be much better as we're going through this RFP process, or the county's going through this RFP process, to not have that looming out there. And I think if an expansion is warranted, and my opinion, if it's only Rutherford County, what I told them, I just said, in the business we're in, if you could work half as much and make the same amount, wouldn't you want to do that, right?
Right.
Well, if we could look to see how 34 other counties and cities don't bring their trash to Murfreesboro, and that could only be Rutherford County, well, we know we're going to have to pay. I mean, we've all known for years that solid waste is going to cost us. I mean, it's not free. And so those are some of the discussions we're having. And hopefully, I think after a meeting with Republic, they were genuine, that they would consider that and, talk about what the next steps. We, talked about the issues that we've been having with smell on the north side of town. We've gone through spending hundreds of thousands of dollars showing that, it's not the sewer system, which we were being blamed for it. And so, I mean, we've worked through all that. I feel a lot more positive than I did, this time last week. But we'll see as it goes through.
Yeah, I mean, that's got to be rough to get blindsided by that when you've been working on it.
Yeah, I think we were criticized. I made a comment that, we were caught off guard, and I don't think we were caught off guard from the standpoint that an expansion had been over the last many, many, many years, that there had been talks about expansion, but we were caught off guard as we were going through this process, and we had met with Republic back in January to present, hey, this is what we found on our smell. We went through a very detailed study showing that it was not our sewer and that it was the landfill. That an expansion was never mentioned. And it was, as a matter of fact, we talked about that they didn't anticipate that at the time. And so it caught us off guard because that was not what we really had been discussing.
Mm-hmm. So can Republic make that expansion? Can they do that expansion completely out of the purview of the city and the county? Can the state say yes and that's done?
We have no control over it. The part one, and what we've learned through TDEC, this part one or phase one of the application is basically making sure you fill out an application correctly. I mean, it's almost like taking a test and making sure you sign your name correctly, and then a map showing where they could expand. So that's really phase one, and that has to go to a central solid waste board that we do have a representative that's on that board. And then if the central solid waste board declines that application, then there are a couple of steps that Republic can do. They can request to go directly to TDEC or even go to Chancery Court. So there are some steps. I hope it doesn't get to that. I hope that, what we talked about, that Republic will be a good neighbor, and this is something that we can all work on together. But the county and the city does not have really a say in the expansion. That's done at the state level.
And that's because it's a private entity, essentially?
Correct.
Gotcha.
Wow.
I just, excuse me. I know people are going to ask when we post this. So is there like a timeline or anything we're looking at?
We're waiting on a formal timeline. I think the application on phase one has to be reviewed by TDEC in 30 days. Okay. So that'd be 30 days from April the 12th. I felt much better about the phase one process, that it's not something that just because phase one could be approved does not mean that then an expansion is imminent, because then it goes through hydrogeological studies, all these different things that it has to go through, which could take as much as 2 years to go through.
Oh gosh. Okay.
So I think that this is just a step one, but I clearly y'all saw my Facebook post that I put that. I mean, I don't think, in my opinion, expansion is an option. I think. If that landfill only was for Rutherford County and the municipalities, then, I think most people would be okay saying, look, if it's our trash that goes in there and we're only, overall, I think the number goes about, Republic told us that we were about 30% to 40% of the trash that goes in there on a yearly basis, but we're not a significant portion of that trash. Mm-hmm. So, if Rutherford County knew that landfill, for instance, if only half of the material that's going in there right now went in there, and that landfill extended another 15 or 16 years, in conjunction with us getting to a zero waste, working
Exactly.
through. But see, here's the issue.
It's a stopgap.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people ask us about recycling. And because of the deal that was put into place in the early 90s, I recycle at our house. A lot of people do. But there's no incentive for the government to get into recycling because the trash being taken out to the landfill is free right now. So, in other words, if Murfreesboro, Rutherford County recycled, you're not really helping the life of that landfill because there's 34 other municipalities and counties that are bringing trash out there that may not recycle. So, really what you're ending up doing is you're bringing on a cost to the resident that doesn't really help with a landfill. Now, here's the deal. If that was just a Rutherford County landfill and we could incentivize people to recycle, in other words, hey, if you recycle, your trash fee is X. If you don't recycle, your trash fee is Y. Then there's an incentive that we can get people to recycle because it saves money.
But don't you think that getting folks started on recycling, that is almost incentive enough? In other words, at some point, that's got to be part of the answer.
That's absolutely part of our plan that we were working towards, knowing that the landfill was going to close. So I think what we as a city would be looking to is the minute that we know that the landfill is going to close, we've got the infrastructure and everything in place to immediately start curbside recycling.
So we've got to train people to do it for years before that, or else it's just not going to work.
So, and I think that's where this RFP process is going through right now, where recycling would be a significant portion of that discussion. But right now in Murfreesboro, we pick up 46,400 trash cans a week. That's what we pick up.
Oh, okay.
And when we pick that up, we immediately fill up our trash trucks and we drive straight to the landfill. Recycling brings another step into that we have to be able to go through, a couple of different processes to be able to
say at least one more step, right?
So, and I think that's, we really pushed for that about 3 years ago. We were going to do a pilot program. It was going to cost about $500,000 to be able to, what my goal was is to say, okay, look, we're going to take an area maybe on the west side of town and say, okay, we're going to do a pilot program to recycling on the west side of town in this area. And then, roll out that, right now I think I pay $10 a month is what I pay to recycle right now. But, if we could do that for less expensive because we're already going to the house, then that's an option that we could look at doing, which I think would be part of this RFP process.
Awesome.
Well, wonderful. Thanks for answering the landfill one.
Yeah.
You went right into that.
Thanks for talking trash.
That was awesome.
Trashy mayor. So I'll keep y'all updated on as this process goes along.
Thank you very much.
It really is changing quite a bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, awesome. Yeah, because that's the number one thing we get right now is people just asking questions about it, want to know.
Well, it's a big deal. It's something that can impact a way of life, and it's like there's not really a lot that I can do about it other than
and I think I told Republic this, and as I told y'all asked me what questions would be off limits. I'm like, nothing's off limits, and I told Republic this, guys, it's hard to say that you're trying to be a good neighbor when we're going through this whole process, and you're basically, it's probably not a good political or mayoral thing to say, but you're basically giving everybody in the community the one finger salute as we're going through trying to figure out how we fix this. And you're like, nah, to heck with that. We're going for an expansion.
Yeah, because we all got to live here, and you just said they came in from Arizona. So
well, I did the question. I did one of the gentlemen who was there, and I think I've learned now after 8 years of doing this, I'm actually just getting to where I'm good at it. And I'm sitting at the table, and you have to. One of the things that's really tough, that's probably different from me being a council member to being mayor, is you deal with conflict just about every day. There's something that you're dealing with every day. And so I'm sitting at the table with this guy, and we were having a great conversation. And I said, hey, now remind me where you're from. And he told me where he's from. And I was like, hey, would you be interested in buying a house somewhere on the north side of town, Murfreesboro, around the dump, so you can experience what we've been experiencing for the last 2 or 3 years? And and to their point, I will say, being good neighbors, you have to have these tough conversations that they did say we've not put our best foot forward on managing the odor, and they've got $6.5 million worth of gas extraction facilities they're putting in place right now that's going to be done in July. And so what I just said is, look, we've sat with you guys before and y'all have told us what you're going to do. So why don't you show us first? And then let's have this conversation.
That's right.
So
Yeah,
good job, Mayor.
Well, thank you for doing that, because I live on that side of town, but where I'm positioned, thankfully, I guess I'm upwind most of the time. But every now and then you get a slight shift in the wind, and you're like, oh, there it is.
Yeah, well,
so,
I mean, where I live 3.5 miles away, and if you get a wind from the north, you're smelling it.
I got you.
Yeah.
It always reminds me of the movie Monsters, Inc., where he goes, hey, you got any odorant? And he was like, you want smelly garbage?
Awesome. Cool. Well, another one that kept coming up, I'll just switch gears on you real quick, was people just talking about the growth of Murfreesboro. Obviously, we're growing like a weed right now, and a lot of people didn't anticipate some of the things that came with that.
Sure.
And just a lot of people, I figured you two go to town on this one with the cost.
How long you got?
The cost of homes and living and different things that are rising right now. And
it's one of the tough things with Murfreesboro right now is affordability. And I don't know how you fix that. I'm not sure that you want the government involved in messing with markets that didn't go well in 2008. I could probably go back and give you several other instances where the government messing with the stock market or different things.
Well, New York City housing, rent control.
Yeah. So I'm not sure that So here's what I would say. Yes, affordability is an issue. But at the same time, the person who moved here 10 years ago, in most instances, their house has probably appreciated 60 to 70%.
Or more.
So I think there's a benefit to that. But I think what you're going to end up seeing as far as affordability is going to be much like Murfreesboro was 15, 20 years ago, when people wanted to live in Davidson County and they couldn't afford to live in Davidson County. They drove to Murfreesboro.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And now what you're seeing is, if you want to live in Murfreesboro, it's hard to find a house anywhere in the 300s unless it's a townhome now.
Yeah.
Unless you find a young friend of mine bought a house in the Mitchell-Nelson area that he paid $185 for. That's a 2-bedroom, 1.5 bath that they're getting ready to fix up. Which I think that helps. But affordability is going to be driving to Coffee County, to Cannon County, to Bedford County, and that's really where that's what's happened with people driving to Wilson County now, and we're all in the mid-state. All the mayors in the meetings I'm in with our mayor's caucus, we all talk about affordability, and Oracle's now announced
8,000
jobs in Nashville, and over
plus some more.
$1 billion investment. So we talked about that this morning, that a lot of those people will be living in Wilson County, Rutherford County, and so that's the issue.
Yeah. Well, there's one thing, John, if you wouldn't mind explaining, because I think you did it perfect the other day with rent and the people moving here from California and the housing market there versus here, and why people, like that one house y'all gave as an example that was listed for like $435 or something and went for $75,000 over.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, so we had a listing out in Rockvale Meadows, and we were listed at whatever it was, $485 or whatever, and it ended up going well over $500. But the person moving in moved from New Jersey, and so affordability is a relative thing, And so for them, they saw this. It's an acre lot. It's a 3,800 square foot house. They fell in love with it. The house that they sold was 2,200 square feet, all vinyl, on less than a quarter of an acre, and they sold it for $550. And their property taxes were like $30,000 a year or something crazy. Astronomical.
I was in a meeting with a couple out of California, and where there's so many people coming from the left coast and the east coast that. You're right. Affordability is relative based on what they've been paying, but I showed them, hey, here's what your tax bill is in Murfreesboro,
and they went, is that per month?
No, that's exactly what they said. They said they were the realtors was with them, and they said, hey, you said it was cheaper to live here. This is per month. And he's like,
no, that's a year.
That's a year, and they were like. Oh.
Yeah, exactly.
Light bulb. Oh.
Yeah, I think, growth is going to be something that we continually deal with. The meeting I had last night, there was probably 50 or 60 people there, and there was less than 10 people who were from from Rutherford County and Murfreesboro who were there. The one thing I did say, and I think we all have to be cognizant about this, there were people that were mad when you and I moved here because we're not from here. And so it's sometimes disingenuous that we're not from here, but we don't want anybody else to move here.
Yeah,
gotcha.
I agree.
And so we have to, I agree that we don't want to just open the gates and not have control over our infrastructure. But, you know, it's hard to argue that Murfreesboro has not been successful. And I think there are things that we could have done better. I mean, I segue in. I mean, I think what I talked about last night was the park on the west side of town.
Yep. Yeah, the park.
I mean, I've been very honest about even going back when I first got on the council, 15 years ago. We were talking about a West Park back then, and we've not done a good job getting that park built. I mean, it's the bottom line. There's no getting around it. Now, there's been extenuating circumstances when we wanted to start the park 5 years ago. We didn't know that the school that we were going to build out in Salem was going to be double the cost of what the same school we built in overall. So it'd be hard to argue if you look at the west side of town that there's not been more infrastructure and facilities built on the west side of town than anywhere in Murfreesboro. We've built more schools on the west side of town. We've built more roads on the west side of town than really anywhere. But we've not built a park. And so I think that's something, I'm committed to. I think now, and this is just my opinion, so I'm not speaking for the entire council, but I think now's the time that we go ahead and start that process.
Yeah. Well, if you don't mind, I loved how you, because there were parts of that I didn't understand either. When you and I were just talking before this, you explained it perfectly.
Yeah, so about 5 years ago, we could not find park property. I mean, we had 11, you can't find property on the west side of town. I mean, so it is really hard to find property. And we couldn't find, we had a consultant that came in and identified 11 to 12 pieces of property. We couldn't get any of them. At the time, I think we had budgeted $30,000 an acre, and the one piece of property that came back to us was about 550 acres at $50,000 an acre, and we were like, okay, we can't afford $25 million for a piece of property. And so, anyway, we found this 840 piece of property, and it was not ideal. I mean, typically you don't want a park that's got an interstate and Blackman Road, Burnt Knob Road, Veterans Parkway, and Vaughn Road. I mean, you typically don't want a park that's completely surrounded by a bunch of roads.
Busy roads.
Yeah, busy roads.
roads. Yeah.
But anyway, that's all we could find. So we bought that property. We paid $40,000 an acre for it, which that property, now is worth a lot more than $40,000 an acre. But we started the process with the Blackman community on designing, what was going to be West Park. And so while that process was going on, we found out we were going to have to build a school. We also had a piece of property that came up on Highway 96 that just out of the blue, 157 acres came up, and it was $28,000 an acre. And it was one of those things we couldn't afford to buy it, but we couldn't afford not to buy it. And so Dr. Gilbert, the former school director, had identified that area as an area to build a school. A fire station was also looking to be built there. So we thought, okay, that makes sense. So anyway, we started the process. The number on the park, on the Blackman Park, came back in the low 40s million dollars, not counting the infrastructure and the land. So it was really about $50 million. And we just, as a council, made the decision that we couldn't afford to do that and build a school, a $50 million school all at the same time. So we hit pause. And so, fast forward 3 or 4 years, the county wanted to buy that 96 property at the time. And, I made it real clear with our staff that, look, if you're going to sell make a recommendation to sell the 96 property, then we're building a park on the 840 property. That deal didn't come to fruition. So, overall, the 96 property, TDOT has agreed. We met with them about a month ago. They agreed they're going to widen Highway 96 from Veterans Parkway all the way to Almaville Road.
Oh,
okay.
wow.
Wow.
So
all right.
that'd be 4 lanes and a turning lane.
I hope everybody listening just heard that.
Yeah, so
Is that about 10 miles?
I don't think it's quite that much because the park property is about a mile from Veterans Parkway, and then I want to say Almaville is about 2.5 miles, that exit.
Is that all? Okay.
Yeah, it's not very far. So, that all of a sudden changed the dynamics of that 96 property because now their infrastructure is going to be there. And so then I said this last night. I'll never forget. We were refinancing some debt that we had, and our interest rate was 50 basis points, so it's 0.5% for about $60 million was our overall interest rate. And then we just did a bond issuance for some infrastructure, and it was about $63 million, and our effective interest rate was 1.2%. And the thing that's a little different for the city of Murfreesboro, we finance over 15 years. We're one of the only 2 municipalities in the state that does that. Most everyone finances over 30 years. So our debt service is definitely higher, but we pay things off super quick. So I mean, we're building, for example, Scales Elementary is almost paid off, and so that school will be here for another 20 years. John Pittard is getting ready to be paid off. So we've got all this debt that, I mean, we pay off really quick, which I would argue is a good thing. I mean,
absolutely.
Well, yeah,
so
for sure.
Anyway, after we did our last bond issuance and the effective interest rate was 1.2%, I remember telling staff, okay, now's the time we got to do this park. I mean, we can afford it now. And so that's something we'll be discussing in this budget, upcoming budget. And what the proposal is from staff, and I think it's sort of gotten lost in translation with the acreage that was announced, but I think if we can leverage jobs and a community, a 40 to 50 acre community park on the 840 property and an athletic facility on the 96 property, but we let the jobs that come in help pay for that park on the 840 property, it's probably a good thing.
Yeah.
And the dynamics of that interchange have changed so much over the last 4 or 5 years. You had Vanderbilt bought 100 acres out there. I think that'll end up coming back to the state. You've got TOA in St. Thomas that have expanded, putting medical facilities out there. So that whole interchange has really, really changed.
Well, and I think that kind of tying back into the growth that we're experiencing, I mean, there's a reason that Murfreesboro is growing in Smyrna, is that we're very attractive places for people to live. And as we bring in more of those types of employers and those types of facilities and that kind of thing, people are looking at it. And that's why we're getting some of the corporate jobs and headquarters and things like that, is because people are going, my people don't want to sit on I-24 for an hour and a half to get to Nashville.
Well, a lady with the county came up in front of us the other day, and I just respectfully disagree, but she told the city council that we needed to quit trying to bring in corporate jobs, that we've not been successful, and we're not ever going to beat Williamson County. And
that's ludicrous, honestly.
And I said, ma'am, I respectfully disagree, but I don't think you want your leaders ever saying, okay, look, we give up. We haven't been successful, we haven't been as successful as we want to be, but are you ever as successful as you want to be? We've been successful on getting your smaller companies, but we've not landed that big company. But on the other side, I mean,
it's going to happen.
Yeah,
it will. It has to.
But the other part too is, I love small businesses. In my core, I love small businesses.
Yes.
So I think we have to be able to support our small businesses just as much as we do. We may not have a large national headquarters, but your national headquarters is here.
That's right.
So,
yep.
I mean, we've got a lot of small businesses that are based here, and look, I get there are always things, and this is coming from a political guy, that we could do better. I mean, there are things that I look back and I say, I wouldn't have done that. Had we had a crystal ball, or how we have known that. But I mean, what you try to do as a government is you see where you've made a mistake that could have handled better, and you just don't do it again.
And here's the other thing: in order for you to land that big, huge one, right? A lot of times you have to give up a lot, and so the same person that says we haven't landed that might also say, well, I can't believe you gave them the tax abatements and everything else that you did. And personally, if I have the choice of 50 small to medium-sized headquarters that employ 10,000 people collectively, or one giant headquarters that employs 10,000 people, I'm taking the 50.
Yeah, I agree.
Personally.
Well, I mean, you look at where we are with the State Farm building that's vacant on the north side of town. So, I think there's something to be said that, I think we're prime for location, because like where Oracle's coming to Nashville, where you've got other
satellites.
Yeah, that we've got that ability. And, I'm not ever going to give up on trying to bring quality jobs to Murfreesboro. I think it would be nice that when our kids graduate, that, they have the opportunity. They don't have to drive to Nashville if they want to have a tech job. I mean, I think it'd be great that we have those here. And it's like the Titanic. I mean, I don't want to equate the city to the Titanic.
Yeah, let's not sink the city, Mayor.
It's like a big cruise ship. You just can't make a turn quickly. It takes time, and I think that's where the city's headed.
Yeah,
I agree.
Yeah, I love what you said just a minute ago or so. I was having this conversation with somebody the other day, and they were talking about why don't people plan for this sort of stuff and yada yada yada. I'm like, do you think they saw this coming? Like, do you think people saw COVID coming? And that sort of stuff.
I mean, you look at Rutherford Boulevard was just built when I got here in '92. We've extended Rutherford Boulevard. We've extended sewer. We built Veterans Parkway. We've got all these things that we've tried to build, but I mean, it's a double-edged sword that we have to use debt to be able to build the things that we need to build in the city. Otherwise, your tax rate would be so high. If you try to do everything out of cash, nobody could afford to live here.
Yeah.
But at the same point, you've got a group out there that says, well, you shouldn't be using debt. So, I feel better about the financial situation of our city than I've ever felt. I mean, our bond rating is one of the highest in Tennessee. So people who are a lot smarter than I am look at our financials and say, it's a good city. I mean, and so, I think we're heading in the right direction, but it just takes time. I mean, I'm not from here. So, and people will talk about the good old boy network, and I'm one of those guys. We're having a discussion today about Murfreesboro Electric Department. That's another issue, but I mean, if I see something that's good old boy, I'm typically jumping on that with both feet.
I got you.
But I think more people now that are moving here have a different perspective and a different expectations of what they want to see as a city. And I think that's what we're still trying to work through.
Well, I think one of the things that's always bugged me about Murfreesboro is that it doesn't seem to have, or for a long time, it didn't seem to have kind of its identity, right? Like you got a 25,000 student campus, and yet if you're more than a mile away from it, there's no blue. Like that drives me crazy, right? But there's a whole lot of folks that will compare it to Williamson County, compare it to Franklin, compare it to that. And my thought is, well, can't we just be Murfreesboro and be cool with being Murfreesboro? Because I kind of like where I live, Yeah.
I mean, and that's where I think as a mayor, I don't think you ever want to have an elected official or a mayor that's not a good salesperson that loves their city,
right?
Or is, So I think I'm not apologetic for Murfreesboro. I mean, I think. I don't get on Facebook very often because when I do, I feel bad about myself because apparently, I'm not a good guy in some people's minds. But we try to do the best that we can, and that's what we try to do with the growth that we had. I mean, if anybody's business was growing at the rapid rate that we are right now, it's hard to keep up with that.
No doubt.
But I think education is top notch here. Public safety is top notch here. I mean, our parks and recreation system. We've got almost 13 acres of parks and recreation. Murfreesboro's won the top parks and recreation city in the state for going on 20 some odd years now. So there's a lot of good things that are happening in this city. There are a lot of things we can improve on, but I mean, it's a good place to live, and it's really getting now where it's not only a good place to move and raise a family. You're seeing more and more people who are moving here to retire. And I think that's something that we continue to work through as well.
Well, if you don't mind, I know we got to watch the time here, but I just wanted to ask. There was one that kept coming up when you were talking about the from years ago when the city was what it was then, and how roads were and different things like that. There were three that kept coming up, and people were asking, "What about New Salem? What about what was it, Cason Lane, and what about Thompson?" Yeah,
so you've got it's crazy. All of those roads. So Cason Lane, I think. You mean 96?
Yes,
right?
sorry.
So
yes.
96, Salem is Highway 99, and Thompson Lane, you wouldn't realize this, those are all state roads.
Okay.
Every single one of them.
No kidding.
The majority of roads that run through Murfreesboro are all state roads. So that means even if we wanted to go out and widen those, we couldn't widen those. It's taken us almost 11 to 12 years to work through the process to get 99 widened to where it is right now, and it should be done in August. So what's going to happen, you're going to...
This August?
Yes.
Wow. Okay.
So you're going to start seeing.
They better get busy because it's a nightmare right now.
It's supposed to be December, but I'm not complaining because anytime TDOT's been great to this community on working through those things. So I think what you're going to see, the city can build roads a lot quicker than the state can. It's just we go through farmland, we go through areas that, it's just easier for us. So I think what you're going to end up seeing, 96 is going to continue being under construction all the way out to Almaville. I think that'll be something that'll be starting and under construction for some time. Highway 99, they're going to move straight from, it's in 3 phases. They're going to move straight from the section they're on right now. Then they're going to work from Cason Lane to Veterans Parkway. Then they're going to come back and work from from Old Fort Parkway back to I-24.
Wow. Okay.
So that whole area will be upgraded. I think it'll take a while for that.
Mm-hmm.
That one's going to be tough. There's a lot of stuff right there.
Yeah, it's not a cheap project. So Thompson Lane, I know they're in right-of-way engineering and right-of-way acquisition. That's going to be another very painful project.
I've actually seen the posts out there because I live over that direction, and I was like, "Oh, look what they're doing! They're getting starting up."
That's a state project that I think will be underway, in the next year or 2 years. And then Highway 96, we said Highway 96 will continually be upgraded. So those are all state roads that we work with our state partners on.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, thank you for answering that because those questions come up all the time.
Yeah,
People, what about this? I know you get it all the time.
Yeah, so look, and I said this earlier that one of the things that we pride ourselves on as elected officials is being responsive. So, S. McFarland at Murfreesboro.com. You can always email me, and if I don't know the answer, I'll get that answer to you pretty quick. Okay,
awesome. Well, thank you. And then one more, if you don't mind.
Sure.
I know you got to run because this was more of a fun one. And I actually remember this got brought up a while back, and you and I were talking about it. But is Murfreesboro ever going to get an ice rink?
You never say never. I know I was asked that question yesterday in the Berkshire community. I think right now our focus is on getting that outdoor park on the Highway 96 area. Mm-hmm. And then from there, I think you start looking at the number one thing that we get asked on the Parks and Recreation side is an aquatics facility.
Okay.
And so my libertarian friends would say find somebody on the private sector to do it, and that's really tough just because those things are so expensive to operate, which is why that we've really held off on doing that because they're so expensive to operate. So
gotcha.
I think what you're going to see, we'll focus on the outdoor park first, and then as we move forward, I think that'll be a great project, especially the aquatics facility, that we could partner with the county to be able to do that. Because, we did that on the tennis courts at Old Fort Parkway, because a lot of our high schools have swim teams, but they don't have pools. Mm-hmm. So I think it would be a great opportunity that the county and the city could partner together. And
the hockey's getting a little bit bigger in our area as well. I know several kids that play.
We've had discussion with the Preds. Where they built the Ford Ice rink there in Hickory Hollow. They built the one in Bellevue. So I think we've had those discussions. It's just right now, in this, maybe I think it's the right thing. But if we went out and started a hockey rink on the west side of town without starting that park that we've been working on for years, it would just not be a good thing to do. So we understand. We really want to get our priorities to make sure, and this is just my opinion, that we get that outdoor park started first.
Yep.
Awesome.
Hey, folks get to skate at Gateway.
That's right.
Thank you. You beat me to it.
In the wintertime.
Word Outreach had an ice rink this past year.
Big shout out. Thank you to Scott Graby for that one.
That's right.
Yeah, he puts that on. That's a fun. I love taking the kids there. That's fun.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Well, we know you got to run. Thank you. You're a very busy man. We really appreciate you coming by.
Anytime.
So, but any last words for listeners, viewers?
I could give you the anchorman sign off. Stay classy, Murfreesboro. But no, I think I'm proud to be mayor of the city. There's not been a day so far. This past year has been so tough.
It's so weird, hasn't it? Oh my gosh!
Just when you think that you're at a, I'm learning how to fly. So it's called steady state. So just when you think you're at steady state, something else comes up.
Yeah.
And so
wind shear.
Yeah. So I thought that we were, I thought that we were in a good shape until the landfill came up. We've got our budget coming up, and so there'll be some good discussions coming up.
Now, just real quick on that one, but for everybody out there listening, watching, people can come to these
Absolutely.
public meetings.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I'm just throwing that out there for everybody.
I mean,
so
we're still operating off of the governor's executive order, which allows, some of our council members have been for, quite some time have been doing virtual meetings, but, the MurfreesboroTN.gov has a phenomenal website that you can watch even if you don't want to come to the meeting, you can watch everything in real time.
yeah, and you stream it live on YouTube, and
Yeah.
I've seen it. Yeah, I've watched some of those.
It's my mom and dad taught me a long time ago. Don't complain unless you want to get involved. So I think if more of us said, "Hey, we want to be part of the solution and not necessarily part of the problem," it makes local government work a whole lot better.
Amen.
Gotcha. There you go.
Gentlemen, appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
again.
Appreciate you.
And for everybody watching, we'll see you on the next one.
Thanks, guys.